I stood there, the sound of their laughter still hanging in the air, my coffee growing cold in my hands. Perfect. Now you can scrub the toilets, my daughter-in-law had said, her grin sharp enough to cut. My son laughed, full, thoughtless, proud of the joke that hollowed something in me. After 30 years of keeping that house spotless, after raising him to know better, he laughed. I didn't argue, I didn't cry. I just smiled, finished my coffee, and decided exactly what I'd erase next, starting with their names. We're about to begin, but if you'd like, share where you're joining from. It reminds me the story doesn't echo into silence, it lands somewhere real. Drop it in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Linda stood at the edge of the long mahogany dining table, the soft murmur of conversation trickling around her like background static. The house smelled like rosemary chicken and lemon-scented floor polish. Bev's doing, no doubt. She had spent the day convincing herself this was just a family dinner, not a test. She reached for a plate and moved toward the open kitchen archway. There she is, Carly's voice rang out like the clink of glass, bright, sharp, and never as friendly as it sounded. Linda smiled tightly. Hey, Carly. Derek turned from the fridge, beer in hand. His tie loosened like he hadn't quite decided whether to relax or stay in charge. Hey, babe, he said to Linda, leaning in for a quick peck that barely grazed her cheek. Glad you made it. Bev emerged from the hallway, arms full of cloth napkins, her eyes scanning everyone with project manager precision. Linda, you want to help me set these? Before she could respond, Carly chimed in again, grinning from her seat. Perfect. Now that you're retired, you can scrub the toilets and keep the silverware shiny. A beat passed. Then Derek laughed. Hard. A loud, open-mouthed laugh that filled the room, echoing against the high ceilings. Oh man, he said, shaking his head. She got you. Linda's fingers paused around a napkin. She let out a soft chuckle, the kind that didn't reach her eyes, and said nothing. Noah, their 17-year-old, sat across the table. His smile faltered. He glanced between his dad and Carly, then back to his mom, eyes catching the stillness in her shoulders. He looked like he wanted to say something, but thought better of it and sank into his chair. Carly, always with the jokes, Bev said lightly, smoothing out a napkin. She didn't look up. Linda took the stack from her and began folding. I suppose I'll have to earn my keep now, she said mildly. Derek was still chuckling as he opened another beer. Welcome to the fun side of retirement, huh? She smiled again, not at him. The dinner passed in a blur of casserole, half-finished stories, and laughter that sometimes sounded a little too forced. Linda spoke only when asked, which wasn't often. Carly dominated the table, spinning tales of nightmare clients and corporate drama with flair. Derek hung on her words like she was a sitcom on TV. Noah texted under the table. Bev kept pouring wine. Later, after dessert had been cleared and Noah had retreated to his room, Linda slipped on her coat by the front door. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of cut grass and distant charcoal. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. Bev, how'd they celebrate your retirement? By assigning chores? Linda stared at the screen for a long moment. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. No reply came to mind that didn't feel like a betrayal or a confession. Inside, through the frosted glass, she saw Derek's silhouette lean close to Carly's, both of them laughing again about something she couldn't hear. The laugh they shared, the same one he used to reserve for her. She stepped off the porch into the quiet dark, her shoes crunching softly against the gravel. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like she was walking away from something. She felt like she was waking up. The second-floor law office smelled like cedarwood and old ambition. Quiet, orderly, just cold enough to keep feelings out. Linda sat alone in the glass-walled conference room, 2 bags resting beside her. One, a worn leather tote stuffed with paper-clipped documents. The other, a black zippered binder she hadn't touched in years. Across from her, the chair sat empty, for now. She checked the time, 9:02 a.m. Russell Dean was never late. She liked that about him. She also liked that he wasn't afraid of quiet. The door opened, and in walked Russell, salt and pepper hair combed straight back. Black-framed glasses perched low. He wore the same charcoal suit she remembered from the last time they met, nearly 10 years ago. Back when the word we still applied to her life. Linda, he said, his voice steady and professional, but not unfriendly. You look well. I've looked worse, she said, but thank you. He sat, adjusting the cuffs of his shirt. I reviewed the documents you scanned over. You've brought more? I want you to see everything, she replied, reaching down and sliding the leather tote across the table. Receipts, titles, investment summaries, each in color-coded folders, neatly labeled. Then she reached for the second bag and placed it softly in front of her. And this. Russell flipped open the first binder. This is your existing estate plan. 2015 revision, she nodded. Standard will, durable POA, advance directive. You and Derek were both co-beneficiaries, with 60% of residuals going jointly to him and Carly? Linda's face didn't change. Yes, Russell looked up. His fingers rested on the edge of the page. I take it that's no longer the intent? I want them both out, she said calmly. No tremble in her voice. No anger either, just clarity. The kind that feels like ice on the skin, bracing, final. He studied her a moment, then closed the folder with a soft click. Understood. I'd like to restructure everything. Full estate revision. Irrevocable living trust with staggered disbursements for Noah. Independent of Derek. I can draft that. I want real property shielded. No visible asset trail tied to my personal name. Russell tapped a pen against his palm, thinking. You'll want a private trust. We can hold real estate through that. Under a corporate trustee or Shell LLC. Depends how invisible you want it. Very, he nodded once, businesslike. Then we'll use a Delaware-registered manager-managed LLC as trustee. I'll file under a clean entity. Linda exhaled. Not relief exactly, just certainty. She pulled a fresh white binder from her bag and opened it. Slipped in a single tabbed sheet protector, then a crisp title page. Using a pen from her coat pocket, she wrote slowly, deliberately, across the cover in black ink. Independent Holdings, 2025. For a moment, she stared at the words. They looked stark, honest. You'll need to move liquid accounts soon, Russell said. If Derek has joint access. He doesn't. Russell gave a subtle nod of approval. Linda closed the new binder and laid her palm on top of it. This one stays off every record. Understood. It's your right. The room was quiet for a long beat, just the soft hum of the air vent and the distant click of someone's keyboard outside. Then Russell asked, Why now? Linda looked out the glass wall. Across the hall, a young woman in her 20s was laughing into a headset. Probably on a client call. Her blouse had pearl buttons. She reminded Linda of someone, but not herself. Because I gave up things, she said finally, her voice like a whisper delivered through clenched teeth. Years I don't get back. I did it thinking it meant something, but it didn't. And now? She turned back to him. Now I want to take back what I can. Russell didn't press. He simply opened a new file on his legal pad. Then let's begin. Linda heard Carly before she even stepped inside the house. So I told him if he couldn't deliver the spec by Thursday, I'd walk the deal. Like, I'm retired from patience, not relevance. She was on speakerphone, voice bouncing off the granite and glass of the open-plan kitchen. Linda set her purse down without a sound. Carly looked up, gave a tight-lipped smile, and muted her call. Hey, Linda. Perfect timing. Linda raised an eyebrow. Would you mind taking Noah to his ortho follow-up? He's supposed to be there at 2. Derek slammed, and I've got a call with the Singapore team. Carly leaned against the counter, manicured nails drumming the edge of her phone. You're the only one with free time these days. Linda gave a small nod. Of course, Carly smiled brightly. You're a lifesaver, she said, then turned and unmuted her call without another word. By the time Noah slid into the passenger seat, earbuds in, hoodie sleeves tugged over his knuckles, the house already felt like a distant memory. Halfway down Ridgeway Avenue, Linda broke the silence. Still hurting? Noah shrugged. Only when I chew the wrong side, she smiled. Good excuse for ice cream. He cracked a faint grin, but didn't look at her. They passed the old fire station, then the florist that always seemed half-closed. Leaves spiraled across the windshield in a slow October dance. Noah pulled one earbud out. You don't have to do all this, you know. Linda glanced at him. The rides, the errands, letting Carly toss stuff on you just 'cause you're not working. She smiled gently. It won't be for long, he frowned. What does that mean? But she didn't answer, just gave the kind of smile that promised more than it explained. When they reached the clinic, Noah hopped out. You don't have to wait, he said, voice careful. I can call you. I'll be nearby. He shut the door, slinging his backpack over one shoulder. For a second, he paused and looked back. She waved once. He didn't wave back. The county clerk's office smelled like toner and institutional coffee. The kind of place time went to rust. Linda stood at the counter, her file already open, paperwork organized and tabbed in sharp military precision. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with a gray scrunchie and bifocals that slid down her nose, eyed the forms. Property tax update, trust transfer, removal of caregiver contact, she murmured as she typed. Yes, Linda said. There was a misprint on the original. It listed someone who isn't qualified. The clerk raised an eyebrow but said nothing. We'll need ID. You're the sole title holder? Now I am. She handed over her driver's license and a notarized declaration. The woman flipped through the documents, initialed a few boxes, and began entering the changes into the system. Behind her, a metal fan clinked softly with each slow turn. Linda watched the screen as Carly's name disappeared from the contact record. Gone. Informal caregiver status. Revoked. Emergency contact. Noah Weston. She pressed her thumb to the digital pad. That's it? She asked. The clerk nodded. You'll get confirmation in the mail. About 10 days. Linda gathered her things. Thank you. She didn't look back as she walked out. Outside, the air had turned sharp, wind curling under the hem of her coat, tugging at her like a warning or a dare. She liked the bite of it. It made her feel awake. Back in the car, she sat still for a moment, keys resting on her lap. She opened her phone and scrolled past Bev's latest message and 2 unread texts from Derek. At the bottom sat a third one, from the unknown number again. Unknown number, I still have the video. Say the word. The lobby of the credit union was quiet. The kind of quiet that came from a Tuesday morning when no one was rushing, no one was panicking, and no one suspected anything was ending. Linda stepped through the automatic doors with a folder tucked under her arm and a calm expression that felt more and more natural by the day. She approached the reception desk. The young woman behind it greeted her with a bright smile. Hi there, how can we help you today? I need to make some changes to my accounts, Linda said. Joint to single and a few closures. Sure thing, the woman tapped her keyboard. Let's get you in with a rep. It'll just be a couple of minutes. Linda took a seat near the window. A bowl of complimentary peppermints sat on a side table, untouched. The muted colors of the carpet matched the soft background hum of printers and copier machines. Nothing urgent, nothing loud. She didn't fidget. She'd waited through years of noise in a house that called itself a home. This was a silence she owned. A few minutes later, she was ushered into a glass-walled office by a man named Vince. Late 30s, collared shirt, polite smile. He gestured for her to sit. So, what are we looking to do today? She opened her folder and slid over a sheet of paper. I'd like to close all joint accounts currently associated with this number, she said. Savings first. Vince scanned the sheet. This is the Weston Walker account. Yes, both names are on it. And Derek is your husband, for now. He nodded, not pushing. There's a balance here. Do you want a certified check or a transfer? Transfer. Into a new retirement distribution account. He blinked. All right, we'll need to open that separately. Beneficiaries? 1. My son, Noah. Irrevocable. He typed quickly, his tone shifting into something more focused. She watched his fingers move over the keyboard. Make it a new name, she added. The account title. What name would you like? She took a moment. Then, Westbridge Holdings. He nodded. Got it. The transactions took time. Verifications, passwords, identity checks. Vince confirmed signatures, printed balances, reviewed each action like a surgeon triple-checking a chart. By the end of it, the Weston Walker shared savings account had been zeroed and marked for closure. Gone. She felt nothing sharp, only space. Anything else today? He asked. Yes, utilities and policies. She pulled out the last sheet in her folder. These are the accounts still tied to our joint mailing address: water, electric, homeowners, auto insurance. I'd like to have them reissued under my name only, and the new trust. That's unusual, but doable, he said, scanning the list. You're also the primary on all of these. Looks like he was just added for contact access. Exactly, remove him. Vince hesitated. You sure about that? Linda met his eyes. Calm, clear. Very. He nodded and started the work. By the time she left the office, it was nearly noon. The sunlight had sharpened, hitting the glass of the front doors with a hard glare. She stepped outside into it, the breeze tugging lightly at her coat sleeves. Bev was waiting at the edge of the lot, leaning against her old silver Subaru, arms folded, sunglasses perched in her hair like she never actually needed them. You look like someone who just burned her wedding album, she said. Linda offered a small smile. Not yet. Bev fell into step beside her as they walked toward the cafe on the corner. So, what was it today? Bank, lawyer, secret offshore account? Credit union, Linda said. Bev raised an eyebrow. I closed the savings, opened a new retirement account, transferred utilities, scrubbed him out. Bev let out a low whistle. You're scrubbing them out, line by line. Linda paused at the crosswalk, watching the traffic pass. Feels cleaner than bleach. Bev looked at her, then ahead. You really are doing it. Linda didn't answer. She didn't need to. The group text lit up at 7:12 a.m. Carly, could you watch Eli this weekend? We've got the client dinner in Chicago and can't get a sitter. Linda saw the message, read it twice, and set her phone down beside her coffee. Outside the window, the early sunlight filtered through the oaks, slicing gold patterns across her kitchen table. She didn't respond. Not right away. Not at all. By 8, she was in her garden, pruning lavender, her gloves soft with dew. The air smelled like soil and morning, something steady, something hers. The phone buzzed twice, then again. She let it vibrate itself quiet. Later, when she came back inside, the screen was full of Carly's follow-ups. Carly. Just need you, sat night, nothing big. Carly. Derek said you don't have plans. Carly. Hello? Linda smiled faintly, set the phone face down, and turned on the radio instead. That afternoon, Bev called. Pack a bag, she said. For what? Long weekend, Michigan shore, cottage, wine, 0 Wi-Fi. You in? Linda hesitated, the pruning shears still in her hand. When do we leave? Tomorrow morning, she could hear Bev grinning through the phone. I'm in, Linda said. By the next day, they were halfway up I-94 with the windows cracked and the scent of pine rolling in. Bev hummed along to Fleetwood Mac, hair whipping in the wind. Linda leaned back against the seat, the hum of the tires beneath her like a heartbeat that finally matched her own. You know, Bev said, glancing over, when I said girls' trip, I half expected you to make an excuse. Something about helping out or being considerate. Linda smiled at the passing fields. I used to think saying no was mean. And now? Now it feels like oxygen. Bev laughed. That's my girl. The sun sank low by the time they reached the cottage. White shingles, blue trim, small enough to feel like a secret. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cedar and lake water. Linda unpacked slowly, savoring the quiet. For the first time in years, no one called her name from another room. No demands, no errands, no list disguised as gratitude. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. She ignored it for a while. When she finally looked, there it was. Derek. You're really gonna leave us hanging like that? She read it once, thumb hovering above the keyboard, and typed, Linda. I'm retired, remember? Then she set the phone down and walked out onto the porch. The lake stretched out dark and glassy, catching the fading pink light like something that could still hold a reflection. Back in West Haven, Carly was pacing the kitchen. She didn't even respond, she snapped into the phone. She's acting brand new. Derek sighed from the other end. Maybe she's busy. Busy doing what? She doesn't work. She doesn't even answer texts anymore. It's weird. He rubbed his forehead. She's been different lately. Different how? He didn't answer right away. Just different. Carly rolled her eyes. Well, she's lucky I'm patient. Nobody else would put up with that kind of attitude. Her voice softened, shifting into something that always made him drop his guard. You'll talk to her, right? He hesitated. Yeah, I'll talk to her. But when he hung up, he didn't call Linda. He just stared at his phone, thumb tapping the screen. As if the silence between them had grown too wide to cross. 3 days later, in a quiet office 2 states away, Russell Dean sat at his desk, finalizing signatures and scanning the last page of the living trust. He reviewed each line twice before sealing the folder marked Independent Holdings, 2025. The documents were flawless, airtight, discreet, and legally binding. Primary trustee, Linda Weston. Sole beneficiary, Noah Weston. Previous designees, Derek Weston and Carly Walker, excluded. Russell placed the binder in the outgoing tray, his pen resting neatly beside it. For a moment he thought about calling to confirm, then decided against it. Linda had made herself perfectly clear. Back at the cottage, Bev poured another glass of wine. The lake outside was still, the air cool enough to smell like coming rain. To fresh starts, Bev said, raising her glass. Linda clinked hers gently. And clean endings. She smiled, not the kind that hid anything, not anymore. Outside, thunder rolled low across the horizon, the sound distant but deliberate. Something was shifting, something irreversible had begun. Linda scrolled slowly, letting the words burn through the screen like acid on silk. Carly Walker, public post, 10 minutes ago. It's wild how some people think retirement means forget your family and act brand new. Gratitude is apparently optional now. There were already 8 likes, 3 heart emojis, and 1 passive-aggressive comment from a mutual friend. Hope everything's okay, hun. Family drama is the worst. Linda took a screenshot. Then a second, catching Carly's name, timestamp, and the comment thread just beginning to curdle. She tapped Save to Files and slid it into the folder labeled Estate 2025 Evidence. She didn't feel angry. She felt prepared. The next morning, Noah came into the kitchen in socks and a wrinkled hoodie, his hair still sleep-matted in the back. He poured cereal in silence, the hum of the fridge loud between them. You see the post? He asked finally. Linda looked up from her folder. I did. He rubbed the back of his neck. Sorry, she was mad. But that doesn't mean it was okay. Linda folded her reading glasses and set them on the table. It's not your apology to make, Noah. Still. He sat down across from her, chewing quietly. The boyishness was still there, just under the surface, but something had shifted. He was watching now, not just looking, aware in a way that mattered. I don't think she realizes, he said after a while. Realizes what? That you're done being quiet. Linda didn't reply. She didn't have to. By 2 p.m., she was back in Russell Dean's office. His paralegal offered her water, then left them alone with the thick legal binder between them. I need to add a clause, Linda said, flipping open the trust to the back tab marked Disputes and Protections. Russell raised an eyebrow. Which kind? Defamation, posthumous. Russell leaned forward slightly, intrigued. That's rare. Not if you've met Carly, Linda said flatly. He gave a small smile. You want to preclude anyone from contesting the trust based on character claims or digital slander. Exactly. No social media tantrums, no performative eulogies, no retroactive sainthood for people who never picked up a phone. Russell nodded, flipping through his tablet to a fresh draft. We can add a no contest clause with digital protections. If a disinherited party publishes defamatory claims after your death, statements intended to undermine the trust's legitimacy or your intent, they lose any standing to challenge it. Perfect. And just so I understand, this is in response to... She slid her phone across the table, the screenshot already open. Russell read it once, expression neutral. Then he tilted the screen to examine the metadata at the bottom. You documented it well. If you keep collecting these, we can build a pattern, enough to invoke intent if needed. That's the plan. He looked at her for a moment. You're writing a will, but you're also writing a record, she nodded. I don't trust memories, but I trust paper. That evening, Bev sat cross-legged on Linda's couch, sipping whiskey from a chipped mug shaped like a raccoon. You really archived her little tantrum? Bev asked, time-stamped and backed up in 2 locations. Damn, Bev laughed. Social media shade has probate weight now, Linda gave a small shrug. An ink lasts longer than a post. Bev raised her mug like a toast. Remind me never to get on your bad side. You'd have to try. They sat quietly for a beat. The TV was off, no music played, just the faint creak of the heating vents settling into night. Linda reached for her binder and flipped to the last tab. Russell's drafting the final no contest provision. If Carly so much as breathes near a court clerk after I'm gone, she's out of even the obligatory condolences. Bev whistled. Cold. No, clean. They sat with that word for a moment. Clean. Outside, the sky had dropped into a deep October blue, the kind that whispered of the cold coming behind it. Linda stood by the window, one hand resting against the glass. Carly's post had faded down the feed now, pushed lower by brunch photos and pumpkin patch selfies. But the memory of it stayed sharp, filed in a place with numbered tabs and zero tolerance. She wasn't seeking revenge. She was documenting reality. So when the reckoning came, it wouldn't feel like punishment. It would feel like proof. The box was sitting on the porch when Linda returned from the market. Branded tape, a barcode sticker, and Carly's name in oversized font. Again, it was the third one this week. Linda bent down and picked it up, inspecting the return label. Same online boutique, same sender in Nevada. She'd never ordered anything from them. Not once. Inside, she found a pair of gold-trimmed champagne flutes wrapped in pastel tissue paper and a handwritten note. For that thing Friday, you'll kill it in heels. See? Linda's jaw tightened. She turned the box sideways and snapped 3 quick photos with her phone. Label, contents, note. Then she placed it on the entry table, wiped her hands, and walked straight to her laptop. On the retailer's website, she scrolled down past the auto-playing ads and tapped live chat support. Agent. Hi, what can I help you with today? Linda. Unauthorized orders sent to my address under someone else's name. Agent. Can I get the name and order number? Linda. Carly Walker. Order number 9243781. This is the 3rd package shipped here. Agent. Are you saying someone else used your address? Linda. Without my permission. I am not affiliated with the purchases. I've requested nothing. Agent. I see the account's billing info does not match your name. Linda. Correct. Remove my address from her account. Flag for misuse. And send written confirmation. There was a pause. Then, Agent. Thank you. We've revoked the shipping address for future orders and flagged the account for review. This activity violates our terms of service. Linda exhaled slowly. Then she opened a second tab and filed a complaint with the Postal Inspector's Office. Misuse of residential address for unauthorized deliveries, potential fraud. She uploaded the photos, her chat transcript, and a formal affidavit. She didn't need to shout. She had paper now. By noon, she was at the hardware store with a new lock set under her arm. A friendly guy named Tony in aisle 4 offered to cut fresh mailbox keys on site. You switching out locks? He asked, squinting in the October sun as she handed him the hardware. Yeah, she said. Too many deliveries, not enough boundaries. He laughed, not understanding. Ain't that the way? Linda smiled thinly. Not anymore. That evening, Bev showed up with Thai takeout and a bottle of wine already uncorked. You look like you've been making moves, she said, setting the bags down on the counter. What happened? Linda handed her the boutique receipt. Bev scanned it, then raised both eyebrows. She's using your address now. Not anymore. Retailer flagged her. USPS has the complaint. Bev let out a low whistle. First you clean house, then you change the locks. Linda unwrapped a spring roll. It's not about the packages. It's the assumption that she still has access. That she still believes I'm a shelf she can stack things on. Bev poured wine into mismatched glasses. She's gonna be pissed. She already is, Linda said. This'll just make it official. They clinked glasses. Back across town, Carly sat on her living room floor, the TV flashing quietly in the background as she tapped furiously into the customer service portal. Your account has been temporarily restricted due to reported misuse of a third-party shipping address. Her jaw dropped. What the hell? She tried to update her shipping profile. Access denied. She refreshed. Still blocked. She grabbed her phone and texted Derek. Carly, your wife just weaponized UPS. Carly, you need to talk to her. Derek didn't respond. She threw the phone down and looked around the room, suddenly aware of how quiet it had become. The kind of quiet you notice when the audience leaves, and you're still performing. Meanwhile, Linda sat on her back porch, the late fall air curling around her collar. She had her folder beside her again, Estate, 2025. She slid in a fresh section, Property Access, Incidents and Protections. Underneath it, she slipped in the complaint form, the photos, and a note from her own hand. Pattern of entitlement, documented and contained. She dated it and closed the binder. For the first time in weeks, her mind didn't jump ahead. No next move, no what if, just quiet. And this time, it belonged to her. It began with the front door slamming too hard. Linda was at the dining table, reviewing paperwork under soft lamplight. The Estate 2025 binder open like a silent judge. She didn't look up when Derek stormed in, his tie askew, phone still clutched in one hand. "You've been real busy," he said, voice sharp. Linda clicked her pen closed. "Hello, Derek." He dropped his keys on the counter. "Don't do that. Don't play civil after you've gone and driven a wedge through everything." She met his eyes. Calm, steady. No wedge, just separation. He threw his hands up. "So now you're what? Some martyr with a folder and a lawyer on speed dial?" "I'm someone who stopped giving pieces of herself to people who thought they were entitled to them." Derek's laugh came out like a scoff. "Because of Carly. Are we still pretending this is about champagne flutes and babysitting?" "It's about boundaries," she said. "The ones you let her cross, over and over." "She's family, Linda. She jokes. She vents. It's not personal." Linda stood and walked to the printer, pulled out a freshly stamped page, and held it up. "Neither is this." He narrowed his eyes. "What's that?" "The finalized trust." His smile faltered. "You and Carly are out," she said plainly. "Removed. As of last week." He blinked. "You're joking." "No, but if you'd like to keep pretending things are funny, go ahead. Seems to be your coping mechanism of choice." "Linda, come on." "You laughed when she said I should scrub toilets," she said, voice low but level. "You laughed when I was still trying to find my footing after retiring from a 20-year career. That was a joke." She turned. Met his gaze head on. "So is your place in my legacy. Now." He froze. The words hit harder because they were spoken without heat. No rage, no raised voice. Just fact. From the stairs, a soft creak. They both turned. Noah. He stood halfway down, hoodie sleeves gripped in his hands, face pale and unreadable. "I didn't mean for him to hear this," Derek muttered. Linda didn't break her gaze. "Didn't mean for a lot of things, apparently." Derek looked at Noah, then back to her. "You're tearing this family apart." "No. I'm untangling myself from a version of it that only served you." He looked around the room as if hoping for backup, but all he found were the same walls that had watched him stay silent for years. Noah stepped down one more stair. "Mom," he said quietly, "can I see it?" Linda handed him the page. The trust signature seal shimmered slightly under the light, gold embossed and final. He read the line near the bottom, his name, standing alone under sole beneficiary. His eyes lifted, full of questions he didn't know how to ask. "You're not responsible for anyone's mess, but your own," Linda said gently. "This just makes sure you won't inherit mine." Derek moved to speak, but Noah beat him to it. "She's not wrong." The words were soft, but they landed like glass breaking on stone. Derek stepped back, stunned. Linda returned to the table and slipped the page into its tabbed protector. The binder clicked shut with a quiet authority that filled the silence Derek had no idea how to handle. "You'll be served formal notice this week," she said, not looking up. "And then?" Linda looked at him, not with anger, not with sorrow, with freedom. "Then we start calling things by their real names." The letter arrived on a Thursday. A thick cream envelope, return address stamped in bold serif. The law offices of Willard and Kent. Linda slid it open with a silver letter opener, her movements slow and deliberate. Inside, a 4-page statement printed on firm legal stock. The first sentence was enough to make Bev whistle when Linda read it aloud later. "Our client, Ms. Carly Walker, asserts that the recent revisions to the Weston estate documents were made under circumstances of undue influence, coercion, and possible cognitive confusion due to the testator's advanced age and impaired judgment following her retirement. Bev nearly choked on her coffee. Cognitive confusion. They think you're senile now. Linda folded the letter neatly. It's a lazy strategy. They're testing boundaries. And? Linda slid the pages into a plastic sleeve and added them to her binder under a new tab labeled Challenges 2025. Boundaries are what I keep. By noon, she was in Russell Dean's office again. He read the letter twice, lips pressing into a thin line. Classic intimidation attempt, he said. They're hoping to scare you into a settlement or reinstatement. They'll be disappointed. Russell leaned back in his chair. I'll file a preemptive response, timeline, medical verification, and witness affidavit. Linda opened her folder and slid 3 documents across the table, already prepared. Russell glanced at the first, Comprehensive Mental Evaluation, September 12, 2025. Signed and notarized by Dr. Elaine Morley. He smiled faintly. You had this ready. I anticipated it. Blood work, cognitive screening, signature verification. This is airtight. She nodded once. You'll also find my doctor's sworn affidavit. States I'm of sound mind, free of medication affecting judgment, and capable of executing all legal documents independently. Russell reviewed it, impressed despite himself. And the timeline. She slid the final sheet across. Every date, phone call, and transaction, cross-checked against digital records. If they try to challenge sequence or motive, it collapses. Russell whistled low. Remind me not to play chess with you. I don't play games, she said softly. I document them. 2 weeks later, the courthouse smelled faintly of disinfectant and burnt coffee. The echo of heels on marble carried through the narrow hallway outside Judge Marsh's chambers. Russell stood beside Linda at the end of the hall, a file folder tucked neatly under his arm. Across from them, Carly sat rigidly next to her attorney, a younger man with an expensive haircut and a misplaced sense of confidence. Carly's expression flickered when Linda entered. She looked thinner, sharper, angry in a way that made her skin look stretched too tight. Russell gave a courteous nod to the opposing counsel. Mr. Kent, Mr. Dean, Judge Marsh's assistant, appeared at the door. Judge will review this in chambers first. You'll be called if necessary. The door shut. Minutes ticked by. No one spoke. Carly shifted in her seat, her lawyer whispering something that didn't land. Linda didn't look at them. She simply straightened the edges of her folder until the corners aligned. When the door opened again, Judge Marsh emerged holding only one file, Russell's. Case dismissed, she said briskly. No hearing warranted. The claims show no merit. Carly's lawyer blinked. Your Honor, if I could— You can't, Judge Marsh interrupted, already turning away. Perhaps advise your client that grief is not a legal basis for entitlement. The hallway went still. Russell closed his folder with a satisfying snap. Carly stared, unblinking, her lips parted, but no sound came out. Russell turned to Linda. That's it, Linda nodded once. Thank you. Then she looked at Carly, not gloating, not triumphant, just finished. Carly's lawyer broke the silence first. You'll receive an invoice for our time, he muttered. Linda tilted her head slightly. So will she. Later that evening, Bev poured them both a drink on the patio, the amber glow of sunset spilling across the table. Well, Bev said, lifting her glass. She came for power, left with a bill. Linda clinked her glass softly against Bev's. And a record, Bev laughed. You really don't miss a beat, do you? Linda looked out toward the horizon, where the light was already fading into the pale blue of early evening. No, she said, not anymore. The sound of crickets swelled in the distance, steady and certain, like a metronome keeping time for a woman who no longer needed anyone else's rhythm. Noah showed up just after 3. He didn't text first, just rang the doorbell and stood with his hands in his hoodie pockets, backpack slung over one shoulder. Linda opened the door and stepped aside without a word. He walked in slowly, glancing around like the house had changed since he was last there. It hadn't, but he had. She closed the door behind him. Mom wants me to ask if you're okay, he said. Linda raised an eyebrow. Does she? He shrugged. Her words were more like, she's unraveling, go check. But I figured I'd ask the real way. Linda walked toward the kitchen. You want something to drink? Water's fine. She poured 2 glasses and slid one across the counter. He took it, didn't drink. Are you? He asked after a pause. Am I what? Okay. Linda studied him a moment, then nodded, slow and certain. I'm better than ever. Noah looked down at his glass. It's just weird. Everything's tense. And Carly's been… Tense is her favorite hobby, he gave a short laugh. Yeah. They sat in silence for a minute, the kind that didn't demand to be filled. I've been thinking about something, he said finally. And I don't want you to take it the wrong way. Try me. I'm saving up to move out. Before graduation, Linda nodded once. Tell me more. I've been taking shifts at the gas station on weekends. It's not much, but I want space. I don't want to live in a house where every room echoes. She smiled gently. You don't owe anyone an apology for wanting peace. His eyes softened. Thanks. She took a breath, then stood and disappeared into the hallway. When she returned, she carried a slim manila folder and handed it to him. What's this? He asked. Something that might help. Inside was a single-page summary. Educational and Living Expense Trust. Noah Weston beneath it. A list of covered items. Tuition, housing, books, relocation, utilities. Each one marked with an asterisk and a date. I've set this up with Russell. It's irrevocable and funded independently of the main trust. It's yours. No strings. No guilt. Noah blinked. You didn't have to. I know, she said. Legacy is for those who honor it. Not just in blood, but in intention. You've shown me respect and truth. Even when it made things harder. His mouth moved, but no words came. She reached across the table and rested her hand lightly over his. This isn't charity, Noah. It's recognition of who you are and of who I see you becoming. He nodded slowly, eyes rimmed red but steady. And no one else knows? He asked. Only Russell and you. That evening, in Russell Dean's office, she reviewed the draft trust paperwork one last time. No alert to Derek or Carly, she confirmed. None, Russell said. It's a separate entity. We've titled it under the Noah Weston Opportunity Trust, funded discreetly from Westbridge Holdings. Untraceable unless someone subpoenas the back-end filings. And even then, they'd hit a wall. Linda tapped the page with one fingernail. Good. I want him to have a chance at building something without being accused of stealing it. Russell nodded. You're giving him something rare. Linda looked out the window, the city skyline darkening as dusk fell across the rooftops. I'm giving him what I didn't get, she said. A foundation, not a leash. When she got home, the porch lights flickered on automatically. The house was still, clean, hers. She sat in the den with a cup of mint tea, binder beside her, thumb resting on the new tab marked Opportunity 2025. Outside, the wind stirred the last leaves on the maple tree by the sidewalk. The sound was soft, almost like breathing. Noah had asked if she was okay. She hadn't lied. She was building something that felt better than okay. She was building forward. It started with a call from the clinic. Hi, Miss Halston. This is Maria from Eastview Oncology. I wanted to quickly verify something on your recent request. Linda, seated at her dining table with her laptop open and contracts spread around her, straightened. What request? Maria hesitated. We received a form yesterday amending your primary care proxy. It lists your daughter, Carly Weston, as your new authorized decision-maker. There was a long, blistering pause. I didn't submit any form, Linda said coolly. That's what I was afraid of, Maria said quietly. It looked off. The signature didn't match your prior files. We flagged it internally, pending verification. Standard protocol. Send me a copy, immediately. She hung up before the woman could respond. By the time the PDF landed in her inbox, Linda was already dialing Russell. The subject line glared at her. Amended healthcare proxy. Patient. Linda Halston. She opened the attachment. Her name was there, typed neatly. The proxy fields were filled in with Carly's information, full name, address, phone number. The signature at the bottom was hers, or rather, a version of hers, tilted slightly, like someone trying to copy it by memory. The date was yesterday. Russell picked up on the second ring. What happened? She forged a medical document, Linda said, voice cold and low. Tried to name herself my proxy. Filed it through the patient portal. They caught it before it processed. Silence. I want this on record, every step, every piece of it. Done, he said instantly. Send me the form, I'll draft the complaint and notify the clinic's compliance office. She forwarded the email without another word. By noon, Russell had submitted a formal report to Eastview's legal department, including Linda's original signature samples, prior proxy filings, and an affidavit of forgery prepared by his office. Make sure her access is revoked, Linda told the clinic's administrator over the phone. Full removal, no more portal rights, no emergency contact access, no billing authorization. Yes, Ms. Halston, the administrator said quickly. We're flagging her profile under restricted access. She'll be listed under unauthorized party, effective immediately. I want confirmation in writing. You'll have it within the hour. The notary was waiting at Russell's office. June, a small woman with sharp eyes and a strict bun, greeted Linda with a brisk nod. Final affidavit? Linda handed it over. Page 6. June reviewed it silently, then stamped and signed, her pen quick and practiced. You're sure about removing your existing proxy designation? Positive, Linda said. It was Derek. It's no longer valid. She signed the last page, her name fluid, unshaking. Russell sat across the table, watching her with something like quiet admiration. You know this triggers a mandatory notification to the previous proxy, Linda nodded. Let him find out the same way he found me. Too late. The air outside was brisk, dry with the promise of autumn. Linda stepped out of the office and slid on her sunglasses. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. Carly, 2 missed calls. Carly, voicemail. Hey, call me. Seriously. It's important. Linda didn't respond. She tapped the screen, held it for a second, and then hit block contact. The sun was sharp against the glass buildings, throwing long shadows across the sidewalk. She stood still, letting the light touch her face, then exhaled through her nose. It wasn't about revenge. Not exactly. It was about precision. Carly had made her move. And now, piece by piece, Linda was erasing every doorway she'd left open. Inside her coat pocket, her fingers grazed the corner of a small index card she'd slipped there earlier that morning, one of Noah's, from years ago. The kind he used to write affirmations on when the house was chaos and the world felt jagged. This one read, You're not being difficult, you're being clear. Her phone buzzed again. A new number flashing this time. Local, no name. She let it ring. But as it stopped, a new alert came in, a voicemail. From Derek. She stared at the screen, then tapped play. Linda, we need to talk. I don't know what the hell you're doing, but I'm not going to be cut out of this family without a fight. Her eyes narrowed. A cold quiet settled into her bones. She opened her calendar and dragged her next meeting back by 2 hours. It was time to move up phase 2. It came in a white envelope with no return address. Hand-delivered to Russell's office, time-stamped and initialed by his receptionist. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Linda stared at it for a full minute before sliding a letter opener beneath the seal. Inside, a single sheet of linen stationery, folded with deliberate care. No smell of cologne, no dramatic signature flourish, just Derek's looping penmanship. The same she'd once deciphered on grocery lists and birthday cards. Linda, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I'm asking you to read this anyway. I was wrong. Not just about the trust, about everything, about you. I let Carly spin her own version of things, and I didn't stop her. I thought I was keeping the peace, but all I did was let the damage compound. I see that now. I see you now. I never should have made you feel like a liability in your own life. I'm sorry for all of it. I can't undo what I enabled, but I'm asking, please, don't shut me out entirely. Let's talk. No lawyers, just us. D. No sign-off beyond that. No love, no always, no tidy closing. Just that initial, the one she used to mock in her head, D for detached. Linda set the letter down and sat with it for a long time. The paper was heavier than she expected. Or maybe her hands were just steadier now. She read it once, then again, then slid it into a slim, tabbed folder labeled Closure, and pushed it into the far drawer of her filing cabinet. Later that afternoon, Bev joined her on the back patio, 2 iced teas in hand. The sun was lower now, filtering through the trellis in long streaks. The breeze smelled faintly of basil from the herb boxes. He really wrote it, Bev asked, settling into the lounge chair beside her. Linda nodded. Handwritten, delivered by a paralegal. Wow, Bev took a long sip of tea. So, will you forgive him? Linda didn't answer right away. She tilted her head slightly, eyes on a robin hopping across the edge of the lawn. Forgiveness, she said finally, isn't the same as restoration. Bev turned to look at her. I'm not walking around with hatred in my pocket, Linda continued. I just have no intention of rebuilding the bridge he set on fire. That's not bitterness. That's memory doing its job. Bev gave a quiet hum of agreement. And Carly, Linda exhaled slowly through her nose. Some debts get called in, others get erased. She tapped a finger on her glass. Hers is accruing interest. At Russell's office the next morning, Linda sat with the revised trust documents in front of her, initialing each page with sharp, unflinching strokes. Noah's fund was now tripled. A second disbursement schedule had been added, spread over 10 years, tied to life milestones. Finishing school, starting a business, first home purchase. Each release structured to build stability, not dependency. It's all here, Russell said, flipping through the pages. I've secured everything under an estate firewall, independent from all other holdings. They'd need a federal warrant just to see the routing number. Perfect, she said. He leaned back, lacing his fingers together. You've done it, you know. It's airtight. Your legacy is sealed. She gave a small nod. It was never about legacy. It was about correcting the record. A soft knock came at the door. Russell's assistant peeked in. The courier's here, ready for filings. Russell glanced at Linda. She gave a single nod. Send them, he said. The door clicked shut. And just like that, it was done. No appeals, no loopholes, no hidden clauses waiting to snap back. Just clarity, codified in ink and law. When Linda got home, the porch was bathed in gold light. Her hydrangeas had started to fade at the edges, burnt pink and copper under October's touch. She sat at her desk with her tea, opened her laptop, and pulled up her email. A new message waited in her inbox. Subject: Incoming request. Proxy Access Appeal Sender. Eastview Legal Department Body. Requester: Carly Weston. Status: Under review. Linda's jaw set. She clicked open the full request. Attached was Carly's typed appeal, and at the bottom a brief statement she hadn't expected to see. If my mother won't give me access, maybe the courts will. She's clearly not of sound judgment anymore. Linda's breath left her in a single tight exhale. Her tea had gone cold. She closed the laptop with a soft snap. Phase 2 wasn't just coming, it had already begun. It was quiet when Noah let himself in. A Saturday morning. Pale lights spilling through the front windows, warming the hardwood floors. He didn't call out, he never did. But he expected to hear the soft clink of dishes, the hum of public radio, maybe the kettle on. Instead, the house felt paused. Still. He walked through the living room, past the worn leather armchair and folded throw blanket, into the kitchen, untouched. Her favorite mug, the cobalt one with the hairline crack, was missing from the drying rack. His stomach turned, just slightly. Linda, he called gently. Nothing. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time. The door to her bedroom was slightly ajar, the way she always left it. Said she hated the sound of it closing all the way. She lay there, back propped against the pillows, reading glasses still perched low on her nose. The tea mug sat on the nightstand, half full, cold. Her eyes were closed, and she wasn't breathing. Bev arrived 11 minutes after he called. He was still on the porch, crouched on the top step, elbows on his knees, hands locked together like a prayer he hadn't spoken. His face was dry but pale, eyes hollow. Bev didn't knock. She went straight in. She was the one who called the coroner, the one who found Linda's legal packet on her desk, clearly labeled, "If I'm gone," and opened it with trembling hands. The one who picked up the phone and dialed Russell, even though her voice caught on the first word. She's gone. The sun had barely shifted in the sky. Russell arrived mid-afternoon, binder in hand, grief carefully shelved beneath professional focus. They gathered around Linda's dining table, Noah, Bev, and 2 estate witnesses listed in the trust. He reviewed the final signed amendments, the notarized filings, the medical documents, the will. It's all active, Russell said. Final distribution protocols start Monday. Probate hearing is already being requested under expedited status. Judge Marsh will hear it personally. Bev wiped at her face with a tissue. What about the appeal? Carly's stunt? Russell glanced at Noah, then back to her. It's moot. Linda's capacity was affirmed in writing 3 times in the last 4 months. Her competency isn't in question. Her instructions stand. And Derek? Russell's mouth was a firm line. Removed. Permanently. All prior beneficiary language has been voided. Noah sat back in his chair, eyes red but dry. She really did it. She did, Russell said, down to the signature on the last page. The hearing was set for Tuesday. Eastview Probate Court, Chamber 3C. The courtroom was small, paneled in pale oak, with recessed lights and stiff-backed chairs that creaked every time someone moved. Carly walked in dressed in black. Silk blouse, designer skirt, sunglasses she didn't take off until she was seated. Bev was already there. So was Russell. Carly didn't greet either of them. Instead, she leaned over the courtroom pew toward Russell and asked low and cool, "Do I get a full copy today, or just a summary?" Russell pulled a manila folder from his briefcase and slid it across the bench toward her. "Summary," he said. "That's all you'll need." She opened it. Her eyes scanned quickly, entitlement, maybe even expectation, already rising in her throat. But then her face froze. Beneficiaries: Noah Weston. 100% disbursement per structured trust schedule. Contingents: none. Former designates: Carly Weston, removed. Derek Halston, removed. A line was drawn under the last sentence, bold. Just cause cited, documented fraud, breach of fiduciary trust, and coercion attempt. Carly looked up, stunned. This is a joke. Russell didn't blink. It's a ruling. She left everything to him? She left clarity, he said. And receipts. Carly's voice rose. This is a setup. I'm her daughter. You can't just... You'll need to take that up with the court, Russell said. But you won't get far. The filings are sealed. The financial firewall is in place. And the inheritance was legally protected from contest, as of 36 hours before her passing. She opened her mouth to argue again. But Judge Marsh walked in just then, and everyone stood. The hearing hadn't even started. And Carly was already losing. Back at Linda's house that night, the lights glowed soft in the windows. Noah sat at the kitchen table, Bev across from him. 2 mugs between them, his coffee, her tea. The house was too quiet. But somehow it wasn't empty. She planned everything, he said quietly. Bev nodded. Every last detail. Noah opened the small drawer by the pantry and pulled out a folded piece of paper he hadn't touched until now. A note. His name on the outside. He unfolded it slowly. But before he could read it, his phone buzzed. Unknown number. The message preview flashed. You think this is over? Watch me. See, Noah stared at it. And then at the note. He set the phone down and began to read. The next move was his. The courtroom was colder this time. Same chamber, 3C. But the light filtering through the high windows felt grayer. Less filtered warmth, more surgical precision. Judge Marsh's bench stood like a cliff face, towering in quiet authority. Noah sat near the back, blazer pressed, expression unreadable. Bev sat beside him, her hands folded neatly in her lap, lips drawn tight. At the front of the room, Carly stood with her attorney, slick, smooth-voiced, and clearly expensive. Derek was seated behind her, wearing a charcoal suit that didn't quite hide the puffiness around his eyes or the restless tapping of his foot. Carly's voice rang out with righteous indignation as her attorney addressed the bench. Your Honor, we're here today to argue that the most recent revisions to the Halston estate were made under duress. My client believes her mother was unduly influenced, emotionally and psychologically, by outside parties who stood to benefit. Judge Marsh adjusted his glasses. The filings you're contesting are dated August 7th, August 30th, and September 28th. 3 separate updates. All witnessed. All notarized. Are you alleging coercion over a 2-month period? Carly's attorney didn't flinch. We are. Judge Marsh didn't blink. Continue. They tried. They brought up Linda's cancer diagnosis, said it made her vulnerable, said Noah had inserted himself into her life after years of distance, said she was isolated, said Russell Dean had too much influence, said the trust schedule was unusual for someone of her generation. But every argument wilted under documentation. Russell had anticipated the angle. He provided timestamps from every meeting, Zoom logs, signed affidavits, dated check-ins with Linda's doctors. She had completed 3 formal mental capacity assessments, 2 with her oncologist, 1 with a court-approved third party, each one unequivocal. Full cognition, independent judgment, no signs of coercion or impairment. Bev had given a statement too. So had Maria from Eastview. So had June, the notary. Each affirmed that Linda knew exactly what she was doing. Judge Marsh asked to see the original trust folder. Russell handed it over, inside. Linda's final handwritten note to Russell. The same line repeated in her own pen on the closing page of the last revision. No manipulation, no confusion, just truth. When Carly's attorney asked to challenge the handwriting, Russell opened a second folder. Samples of Linda's script across 20 years, journals, lease agreements, even a birthday card she'd written to Russell's daughter when she graduated from college. Identical, uncoached, unmistakable. By the time the judge set the file down, the room felt like it was holding its breath. Judge Marsh cleared his throat, hands folded neatly over the bench. Ms. Weston, Mr. Halston, this court finds 0 basis to support your claim of undue influence or impaired capacity. The evidence submitted in defense of the Halston estate is overwhelming, consistent, and, frankly, impenetrable. Carly blinked hard, jaw clenched. Her attorney whispered something, but she didn't respond. The judge continued, voice level and final. Appeal dismissed with prejudice. You will not be permitted to refile. All court costs associated with this hearing will be your responsibility, Ms. Weston. Given you initiated the claim, Carly opened her mouth, then shut it. Derek looked like he wanted to shrink into the floor. Russell stood without a word, nodded once to the judge, and walked calmly from the courtroom. That evening, as the courthouse emptied into a chilled October dusk, Russell entered the private vault at his firm. He keyed in the final authorization code on the digital panel and slid a sleek folder from the top drawer. Weston Trust, Structured Release Authorization. With a single signature, the trust's full funds shifted to their new custodian, Noah Weston, trustee. It was done. Final, bulletproof. No clawbacks, no backdoors. Just intention, made law. Across town, Bev tugged the sleeves of her flannel up and crouched by a patch of cleared soil just behind the church parking lot. The first wooden stake was already in the ground, marked with Linda's name and the year etched into it in weather-safe ink. She pressed her palms to the cool dirt, grounding herself. Then she stood, turned to the small group behind her, and called out, "Let's get the rosemary in first. Linda always said it kept the rabbits away." Laughter rippled lightly through the group. Then shovels hit soil, soft and steady. The Halston Community Garden was underway. Noah stood just outside the gate, watching, hands in his pockets, the late sun catching the edge of his jaw. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper, Linda's note. He'd read it 20 times now. He'd memorized the first line. "You never needed my permission to be extraordinary, but I'm giving it anyway." He slid the letter back into his pocket. Just as his phone buzzed, voicemail, unknown number again. He played it. "You didn't win. You just inherited the mess. Hope you know what to do with it." A click. No name. But he didn't need one. He stared out over the garden, lips pressed tight. And then he whispered, more to himself than anyone else, "Then let's clean it up." The room was hushed, lit by soft amber sconces and the quiet glow of a projection screen. A title slide faded into view. Estate as Autonomy, the Linda Halston Legacy, National Symposium on Elder Law and Advocacy, Philadelphia, PA. Noah stood at the podium in a charcoal blazer and crisp open collar, a slim mic clipped to his lapel. He wasn't a polished speaker. He didn't have to be. The room leaned forward for every word, not because of his cadence. but because of what and who he represented. She taught me that giving people power isn't the same as giving them control, he said. Legacy doesn't have to mean inheritance. Sometimes it's just the blueprint for how to walk away with your dignity intact. A photo appeared behind him, Linda in her backyard, sunglasses on, mug in hand, mid-laugh, candid, unfiltered, free. She once told me, "The best revenge is a well-timed signature." Soft laughter rippled through the audience. Then he paused. And she didn't just talk about it. She built a structure, ironclad, so that no one could rewrite her story once she was gone. He closed his folder. And because of that, a dozen students next year will go to college without debt. 3 women have already started their own businesses. One kid, 16, just moved into his first apartment without fear of it being taken out from under him. He stepped back from the podium. Applause filled the room. The memorial was held quietly, a month later, on a Sunday just before Thanksgiving. Not at a church, but in the community garden behind First Elm Lutheran, where the rosemary had already survived its first frost. Noah wore her favorite flannel. Bev read aloud the quote carved into the garden's stone marker: "What you grow should be yours to keep." LH. A small brass bench had been installed under the maple tree. Neighbors stopped by with cinnamon bread and apple cider. Past students left folded thank you notes at the edge of the garden bed. Carly never came. No email, no card, no apology. And Derek? He had sold his house in early November and relocated to Kansas City. Rumor was he'd lost 2 major clients, and one longtime friend had ghosted him completely after the court hearing went public. Bev had read the article in the paper twice, before quietly folding it into the fireplace. "Let ash be ash," she murmured, then went out and laid a single white rose on the edge of Linda's stone. 1 week later, Russell met with Noah in the corner office Linda had once sat in herself. He handed over the final audit report, confirming every trust transaction. "All secure," he said, "and still generating interest. You'll have room to expand the opportunity fund if you want." Noah leaned back slightly, fingers resting on the binder's edge. "She'd want that. A version of her in every city." "She's already halfway there," Russell said, smiling. Noah nodded slowly. They shook hands, not just in closure, but in quiet gratitude. Then Noah tucked the binder under his arm and left, coat collar upturned against the cold. That night, at home, he went through the last of her files. Not legal ones, personal ones. Letters she'd written but never sent. Receipts for donations she'd made anonymously. Jokes clipped from newspapers. One manila folder labeled, "Not that I'm petty, but..." And then, one final envelope. Inside, a printed transcript. A draft of the speech she'd written for a retirement party she never got to give. He sat on the couch and read it all, beginning to end. At the bottom of the last page, in her handwriting, was the line he would never forget. "After I retired, my daughter-in-law said, 'Perfect. Now you can scrub the toilets.' And my son burst out laughing. I smiled, walked straight to my lawyer, and made sure their names vanished from every document that still carried mine. And just like that, she had the last word.